and you will not hear. I cry out to you, violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists and contention arises. Therefore, the law is ignored and justice is never upheld. For the wicked surround the righteous. Therefore, justice comes out perverted. And Luke 5, look among the nations, observe, be astonished, wonder, because I'm doing something in your days. You will not believe if you are told. I would like us, not just as Kenyans, but global citizens, there is strife everywhere in Israel, with Iraq, uh, even the great America has its own problems. But coming home, I would like you in your own time to read the book of Habakkuk, uh, 1. And I have stopped at 1 to 5 because this is not a sermon, but it is a very interesting revelation. So I want all of us to overcome the trap of discouragement. Trust God through life's disappointments. He'll bring good from everything that touches your life. Do you ever feel stuck in discouragement? And I think the gentleman who spoke to this. If so, you are not alone. At some point, everyone experiences dashed hopes. Disappointment is a normal initial reaction. But if it is allowed to linger, it can turn into discouragement that hovers like a dark, heavy cloud in your life. The circumstances that trigger these emotions may be unavoidable, but how we respond is a choice. Either we can let sadness overwhelm us, or we can face the situation with courage and bring it before the one who can help. Deuteronomy 31:6. So living in discouragement divides the mind, makes it hard to focus on anything besides our pain. Then an anger becomes habitual. We look for someone to blame: God, people around us, or ourselves. And I would like to encourage all of us, in whatever space God has put us in today, uh, don't let discouragement linger. You can't avoid some of it, but don't let it linger in your mind. Take our cases, those of us who are, God has given opportunities to lead. Whichever level, you are a legislature, you are a cabinet secretary, you are a vice chancellor, you are a member of parliament, you are a church leader, you are a professor in the classroom, a businessman. Look at what has happened to the shops in parts of the country. That's a lot of discouragement around us. And like now, I am just praying to God that there is a semblance of reason, because these politics we are tinkering with can take us to very bad swamps as a country. And even those of us running institutions. I would like Daystar. I would like stability because there's so much I want to do in Daystar. Uh, uh, this year, this coming academic year, I want to see my numbers go up. I'm praying to God that we can go towards 9,000 students. I would like to see the School of Law occupied in September. It is ready. We've now gotten the LLM program uh, through the commission. So the LLM program is accredited. We have broken ground for the chapel. I want to see School of Nursing Phase 2 started. I've just come from the Uganda Christian University, which was mentored by Daystar in its beginnings. And I was really struck with happiness to see that they have a School of Medicine, they have a School of Dentistry. The law school at UCU is the largest school in the university. What a delight. And a Christ-centered university. So as I go to sleep, I lament for my country. I think it was Patterson, cry, my beloved country. I cry for my country because just within my space, God has given me an opportunity to cause transformation. But if the macro context, macro social context, the bigger context, the economy, the social structures for stability are not stable, we get very discouraged. And I'm sure everybody, up to the family level, I think even families are very, very tensed up and discouraged. But I think either we can let sadness overwhelm us or we can face the situation with courage and bring it before the one who can help. Because living in discouragement divides the mind, making it hard to focus on anything besides our pain. And once this anger becomes habitual, we'll look for someone to blame. We even blame God, we blame our partners, we blame everything else. And sometimes, rightly so. The other day on TV, I saw somebody who God has given a position of privilege to be in the Senate of the Republic of Kenya, speaking things that really angered many people and terrified many people. So frustration that isn't handled well may develop into despair. And this is what I'm seeing in our country. I'm seeing the frustrations in the young people and a lot of despair. Yesterday, I had a very candid conversation with my academic leadership in the university, the deans, the directors, and all of them. And I was very, very firm that these students, whether they are in a PhD, masters, or undergraduate, must find encouragement in Daystar, must see hope. So when we, as facilitators of that, are missing classes, are not supporting students, students are desperate with their proposals, we are not looking at them, then you don't deserve to be in this university. So, because there is a lot of despair. So in a fog of discouragement, it's easy to make poor decisions based on bruised emotions instead of truth. That's why I hear people, we have now begun to label other Kenyans descriptives like goons and everything else. Please understand the desperation that some of these people are in. Of course, some are criminals, but a lot of them, mob psychology comes in. And you know, we had this narrative about the rich and the hustlers. It is now coming to pass. Yeah, that's why nobody will be safe. So, words have meaning. Words have meaning. So when we pronounce these words, let us know that they will come to pass. So now we have all these people doing impossible things, and the security forces are also under tension. So where are we going? And in a fog of discouragement, it's easy to make poor decisions based on bruised emotions instead of truth. Obviously, choosing this self-destructive path is not God's best for us as Kenyans and as individuals. So we all face disappointment from time to time, and believers are not to wallow in it. No, instead, God wants us to trust Him with everything, even unmet expectations and sadness. A lot of unmet expectations. Uh, People call them false hopes and false promises. Uh, Me, I call them unmet expectations and sadness. So remember, there is divine purpose for everything He allows to touch His children's lives. And I just want to encourage all of us that there is hope, and we should not get discouraged. We should soldier on, uh, even in all types of discouragements. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning with thanksgiving for allowing us to see another day, for allowing us to go into the book of Habakkuk for encouragement. And Lord, what a reflection of our society, particularly Kenya today. And Lord, let us not allow this disappointment to be our mainstay, but instead let us be hopeful in you and pray for change that is positive and for the good of our nation, the good of Africa, and the good of the world. For I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. I think that's my short devotion. I would have liked to delve into it a great deal, but we'll leave it at that. Now, this morning, I would like to um, wind up the literature review, chapter 2, and hope that you are working on your proposals. I'm aware that there are overlaps here and there, but I want to encourage us to take advantage of those overlaps and be able to structure your chapter 1 and throw it at us as your supervisors. So I would like to I've tried to condense my thoughts on literature review, and then after that we are going to look at a sample of a literature review and how you develop, just to open up your thinking, although you'll be doing different topics. So let me look for this. Um, yes, good. So I would like us to, I remember this is a seminar, so I am not going to get into the details. It's not a class, a normal class. We are just going to touch on ideas as we wrap up the literature review. And then, of course, when you start writing your chapter 2 with your supervisors, you'll be able to make reference. And all this work also, we shall be sending it over to you after this class. So the importance and key steps of conducting an effective literature review process, and all I'm trying to do, I'm attempting to run around the whole of literature review, including the notes we had sent you earlier. You can read them to consolidate the thinking. And then I want us to go through a very detailed case study of how you'd write your chapter 2, given the topic that I have chosen. So, number one is I want to cover the understanding the purpose of a literature review, identifying the relevant databases and sources of literature search, developing search strategies and criteria. You must have strategies for inclusion and exclusion. What will you put in your chapter? What won't you? What will you read? What is relevant? What is significant? What walks you towards solving your problem? And then number 4, we look at synthesizing and organizing your findings very briefly, and then critical evaluation of the selected literature. And this is where you come out as a scholar, when you are able to critically evaluate the literature and then proper citation and referencing of the literature. And I know you have encountered all these, but we know that as you go over this over and over and over again, you become stronger in the processes of research methods. So understanding the purpose of a literature review is our first part. And I just want to say this. First of all, note what we are looking for. We are understanding the purpose of a literature review. So the first part is identifying relevant sources. So exploring diverse literature sources, identifying and exploring a wide range of literature sources is crucial for a comprehensive literature review process. And I always encourage my colleagues, lecturers, to help the students mine the right, appropriate, relevant literature for the topic they have chosen. Then there is the critical evaluation of existing literature. So after you have this wide range of literature sources, and you have identified and you have explored it and found it to be appropriate, conducting a critical evaluation of existing research helps in understanding the strengths and weaknesses of various studies. So at PhD level, you're not reading Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. No. Or Cyprian Equensis, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. Or Ngugi wa Thiong'o's A Grain of Wheat. You are looking at what you are reading critically, and you're looking for strengths and weaknesses depending on the topic you are dealing with. And then building a theoretical framework. Now, this is very, very important. Perhaps this is what I expect at PhD level, that utilizing the literature you have got to construct a theoretical framework, call it a conceptual framework, provides a foundation for the research study. In other words, you are reading the literature to get, if it is quantitative studies, to pull out the critical variables that you will conceptualize in hypothesizing what your problem is, or if you are doing a qualitative study, then you are searching for what we call the central phenomenon and the attributes associated to it. So if you are doing a qualitative study, for example, on poverty in urban areas in Kenya, so the central phenomenon here is poverty. And so you're going to look at the attributes that assemble this phenomenon, this central phenomenon. And you're going to collect views, and you're going to do recordings and pictures and get to develop ideas as to why poverty is so central in the lives of Kenyans living in urban settlements. I was talking somewhere, I don't know where, and I was asking, how do we explain the phenomenon of flying toilets in Kibera slums 50 years after independence? Yeah, I mean, there is a problem. And we have to investigate this central phenomenon of poverty. And by the way, it is getting worse, because when I lived in Kibera, when I grew up in the slums of Kibera, we had pit latrines. We didn't have flying toilets. So if you are doing a qualitative study, you have to look at the literature of urban settlements. Look at this phenomenon, whether it exists in Brazil or in India, and look at the attributes that fortify, by the way, poverty, and then bring it down to Kibera or Korogosho or Shamaiko, wherever it is, and go there and interview people around this phenomenon. And one attribute you're looking at is sanitation. So at a PhD level also, you don't look at poverty grossly. You pick an attribute, you pick a segment, and then you delve into it deeply. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a seminar, so I want you to listen to my words, because I am deliberately going to be not just sagacious, but I'm going to be judicious, because I'm addressing a PhD class. So I've talked about variables when you're talking about a theoretical framework, but I've also talked about a phenomenon for qualitative studies. And you notice that in qualitative studies, you are looking at what we call the thesis of the phenomenon. So you are trying to see, can I develop a thesis around twilight girls in our cities? Instead of, I mean, everybody condemns them. All we see are, pictures about them. Can we develop a thesis around that phenomenon? Can we develop a thesis around ethnicity and politics in Kenya from a qualitative perspective? Yes. Can we study the phenomenon of democratization in Kenya? Can we look at the phenomenon of the Gen Zs in the Republic of Kenya, which is going to be a global case study very soon? And you can see how we are enticing other young people, not just across Africa, but across the world. And this is a very, so I'm saying, utilizing the literature, you should be able to construct a theoretical framework that will provide a foundation for your study. And then synthesizing existing knowledge, to synthesize. And many people don't quite understand this concept of synthesis. Synthesis is not breaking down. No. Synthesis is forming something. You are synthesizing. And those of us who have gone through high school in Kenya, we all did biology. We know photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. Photo is light, energy from the sun. Synthesis. We bring carbon dioxide, we bring water under the control of chlorophyll, and we get sugar produced. We have synthesized sugar. So when you do literature review, you are synthesizing existing knowledge. You recognize key themes and findings from existing literature, and this will help you in synthesizing the knowledge surrounding your study area. So that is one aspect. The other one is establishing connections and patterns. So establishing connections and patterns within the literature aids in developing a comprehensive understanding of the research topic. And then at PhD level, I expect you to identify gaps and contradictions. And this is where I will dance my baby. So when I will see that, sorry, my internet is fluctuating. I'm actually tethering. When I will see my baby, in quotes, able to identify gaps and contradictions, then when you start to detect gaps and contradictions in the existing literature, will lead to identification of areas for further research. That is what synthesis is all about. Recognizing key themes and findings, establishing connections and patterns, and then identifying gaps and contradictions. I want to emphasize, chapter 1 is almost generic, and you only modify to suit your topic. It is segmented, it is defined. But chapter 2 is where the goodness and the substance of that scholar begins to show. But that will not come if you don't do synthesis of existing knowledge after you have found the knowledge. But of course, you can't synthesize what is not there. You must find the knowledge first, and then you begin to synthesize it. So you must identify, I'm going back, identify relevant sources, have all this together, and then now do the synthesis. I want you to note this. This is what I expect. You must contribute to knowledge advancement. So you must be able to generate new insights and perspectives from existing literature and contribute to the advancement of knowledge in the field. I began to see that when I was looking at your topics and we are presenting them. I heard voices that were saying, but Prof, what I want to do is this. I don't want to do this. You are now, when you start to reason like that, you are generating new insights and perspectives, which now will allow us to contribute to knowledge advancement. The literature review will inform future research directions by highlighting areas that require further investigation. That's why today, a lot of students are attracted globally to meta-analysis. They are saying we are not going to reinvent knowledge around this area. We are going to look at all the studies that have been done around this area on this topic, and we are going to analyze and then come out with the significant variables and their relative influence in that area. And then we can now send it to the world for future research. And then enhancing the quality of research outcomes. I think by integrating existing knowledge and identifying potential areas for improvement, you are actually improving the quality of future research. So, and I'm being deliberate here. So what was the first thing? Understanding the purpose of literature review. That's what I've been going through now. After we understand the purpose of the literature review, we then identify the relevant databases and sources for literature review. First of all, I hope everybody in this class has a tool for research. And that tool for research is not a mobile phone. It is either a PC in your study, a personal computer, or you have your tablet, but not a phone. And I know some of us have phones that can carry tons of data. But what a laptop does, what a tablet does, it sits you into the situation. And that is what a phone can't do. So studying is a religious process because accumulation of knowledge is God-driven. And so you must create circumstances that allow you to be in an environment that urges you to seek for that knowledge. But if you are casual on your mobile phone and you say, after all, on my mobile, I can do this, I can do this. You will not get it because I'm going to ask you to open folders, any literature that you get that is interesting. I know I can do it on my mobile, but on my laptop or on my tablet, I have the space. It helps me create the mindset. I'm also hoping that each one of you at PhD level have an area where you study in your house, not on the dining table. At worst, put a table in the bedroom, so long as the light is not broadcast all over the room, but at the table where you're working. Or take one of the rooms, if God has blessed you with another bedroom or another room, and create a nice study so that I can also come, or your friend can also come, and we sit in the study as people are eating. If it is in Western, they're eating ugali with chicken or nyanza, ugali with ngege or moranga, githeri, and beating stories about Wamunyoro and so on. You are busy in your room reading. So identifying the relevant databases and sources for literature search. And this, the first thing is we need to understand the scope of the literature search. And as I was working through this, it was very obvious. If you have not grasped the scope of the literature search, then even defining the research questions and objectives will be a problem. Do you know some of us take a topic and you start saying, this will be my research questions. It's a lie. It's a fallacy. You cannot, the research questions don't come from the air or from some magical encounter in your brain. Defining the research questions and objectives, clearly defining the research questions and objectives helps to identify the relevant databases and sources for literature search. So this has to come out of a lot of literature search around the area. That's why I would want to throw at you 3-4 articles, and then you then begin to crystallize what your research question will be and what the objectives, no, first of all, what your objectives would be, and then what the research questions would look like. So I will expect you to identify or to explore different academic databases, many databases, PubMed, Scopus, and many others that you'll encounter. And you get to understand the depth and scope of the literature. Now, how you do it, of course, you'll take key terms, you'll put them in, and you'll search out, and articles will come carrying those key terms. But I want you to also note that don't hesitate utilizing what I call specialized sources and gray literature. Incorporating special sources and gray literature can provide valuable insights not found in traditional databases. So don't dismiss unpublished work. Yes. Don't dismiss unpublished work. Don't dismiss oral narratives given by old mamas or old men. Don't dismiss the interpretation of the Bible by the local pastor who did not go beyond class 8. Don't dismiss the business acumen of that Kikuyu trader who started off selling plastic combs and now has a very big wholesale shop. But now, as a scientist, as a researcher, you will learn how to relate or to strengthen the gray literature by looking at related studies or related knowledge from acknowledged databases. You need to evaluate the credibility and relevance of sources. So assessing the credibility of scholarly articles is very important. That will ensure quality and reliability of the literature used in the review. So peer-reviewed articles. Please don't go too far in the wilderness and you see an article that is not a credible journal article. You search for credibility index and you jump for it because it has very interesting stories. There's no harm in watching a Nigerian movie on a Saturday afternoon. There's no harm. But for you now, that Nigerian movie cannot mesmerize your perception of love and the tragedies that go with it. Why don't you look at a serious movie like Sivago? That's what I'm saying. So it's very important for you to sit in credible places. But again, at the same time, I'm saying, don't be apprehensive about gray literature. It can spur, it can trigger something in you that really you had not conceptualized the way this literature is bringing it out. Then now you go and do validation or consolidation in those other databases. Now, considering the relevance of the research topic, I want you to ensure that the selected sources are directly relevant to the research topic. And this obviously enhances the effectiveness of the literature review process. So please don't run away. Be very close to where you are, where your topic is. And if you are around there, and then you enhance the effectiveness of the literature review process. Stop meandering on the periphery and stay steadfast at the center. Because it is at the center that you get the truth, you get the heat, you get the passion to stimulate you as you join the congregation of scholars. I'm also very particular about the recency and currency of sources. This is crucial to capturing the most up-to-date information and evidence. And pay attention here. Recency and currency. I have no problem if you are a business student and you are in the area of entrepreneurship and you are studying the works of Schumpeter in 1889, for example. I have no problem. If you are doing survival and evolution, I have no problem in you referencing Darwin. If you are doing management, I have no problem in you picking the works of Peter Drucker of 1970. Why? Because those works are seminal papers. The vitality of the contents of those papers have become foundational in that area of study. So don't also carry this blindly. Recency and currency. There are certain seminal papers. When I was at Moy University, I would have explained this differently. But now that I'm at Daystar and we are deeply Christ-centered, my language is very measured. That's what the Bible teaches me. But I would have explained, if you meet any of my students who I supervised, they will always tell you what a definition of seminal papers that Ayiro brought. So there are studies that you cannot avoid. They are foundational. They are seminal papers. But, ladies and gentlemen, when I read your proposal, when I read that thesis that me and you will publish articles from, I expect that we are walking at the frontier of knowledge today. So, Millie, if you are doing the aspect of devolution, funding, CDF, all those things, I expect you to move to the latest models that are being adapted by different systems across the globe that will actually inform our existing development models that we have adopted as a country, but we have never done anything to ventilate and to refashion them based on the up-to-date information and evidence across the globe. That's what I'm saying. Um, I think, sorry, just a minute. I wanted to check on something. Sorry about that. Um, we are still jumping. We are. I'm emphasizing this because some people say, "How far can I go down in my literature chronologically?" But how recent can I become? I'm going to talk about this hopefully today. This RSS phenomenon that I would like to see some of you, and I'm serious here. I would like to see some of you cite studies of 2027. 2027. So I would like to see some of you go to the RSS feed and get the latest knowledge in that area that is awaiting publication. So it's a way of syndicating knowledge. And so how far can you go in terms of currency? 2 years before, 2 years ahead of us today. So I want you to have the ambition to search, to mine, to bring out knowledge that is still out there and you are already looking at it. Managing and organizing the gathered literature, you have to create a systematic approach for literature management. So don't throw your literature all over. That's why I said the phone is good, but the laptop, the tablet is better. So developing a systematic approach for organizing and managing the gathered literature facilitates efficient retrieval and referencing. If you come to my computer here, if I gave it to you, just searching for something out of here will take you 1-2 hours to get to understand what is on this desktop. But when I come on it myself, I can run very quickly to the PhD combined class. I can go straight to what I taught you in research methods. I can go to seminar 1 and pull out what I did in seminar 1, what I did in seminar 2. I can go to where I have stored relevant references for my students. That's what I'm talking about. You should be able to do that with your literature review. But I'm also hoping that you are able to utilize citation management tools. You are now getting into academia, so leveraging on citation management tools like EndNote and Zotero streamlines the organization and citation of the literature sources. Many of you encounter literature and then you just look at it, alafu mnawachana. But you know, when you encounter good literature, you should have a database on your laptop where you throw that citation as a reference and leave it there. So that by the time you're finishing chapter 1, all the references, all the citations, the references are already in place. Chapter 2, chapter 3, and then when we are now preparing for defense, you just pull it out, update it, clean it, and that forms the reference at the end of your research proposal. Thoroughly documenting the search strategies and results enables transparency and reproducibility in the literature review process. I insist that you will tell me the databases you went to in your chapter 2. There must be a section where you are thoroughly telling me these were my reference tools, my databases that I went to be able to get the literature that I want to discuss with you. When we are doing individual supervision, we insist that although it is not in your graduate handbook, but we are talking about transparency and being able to replicate. Then you must tell us how are you enabled? Now, number 3, developing such strategies and criteria for inclusion and exclusion. How much of the literature do you carry? First of all, identify relevant keywords and synonyms. So if I'm looking at mental health therapies, I'll pick the keywords in that area. And where would you have gotten the keywords? From the articles, from the literature you'll have encountered, or from your theory in class. So carefully selecting keywords and their synonyms to ensure all relevant literature is captured in the search process. Then you must use the appropriate databases and search engines. So if you are in psychology, you are in development studies, you are in education, whichever area you are in, you choose the most suitable databases. And you can Google and ask for databases carrying business articles, Emerald and the others, for example, in psychology, in development studies, in strategic management. It will direct you to the databases and the search engines to effectively retrieve literature that aligns with the research focus. So don't just Google. No, get closer. And how do you get closer? You're looking for the literature that will breathe into your topic. So you're not searching the whole world. I don't know when you are being taught how to use the library, whether you are taught implementing search filters and limits. You can engage search filters and limits to refine search results and exclude irrelevant literature, ensuring a more targeted approach. I think this we shall meet in the case study that I want to present to you this morning. You must have filters that if this material has this, reject. If it has this, send me to the next level. Send me to the next articles. That really refines your search results and you're able to exclude irrelevant literature, ensuring a more targeted approach. Establishing a clear criteria for inclusion is also very critical in this process. So, define specific inclusion criteria to determine which literature meets the requirements for inclusion in the review. So don't go and talk about the finance bill 2024 and what is your Wasike, you are really messing up my slides. So you ask yourself, listen carefully, Finance Bill Act 2024, if you just do that, you have not defined the specific inclusion criteria. So one of the obvious criteria must be in Kenya. So it is not in Tanzania, in Cameroon, in the world. What is it around the finance bill that you are interested in? Taxation. So I'm developing inclusion criteria. What other criteria, economic implications and growth rate of the country? So you are defining inclusion criteria. These articles will just come out, and the ones that don't have it will be filtered out. You also need to consider publication date and language. I think I've belabored that one. Let us not be narrow-minded. Let us also look back at articles. And how do you know that an article is useful? An article is almost a seminal paper. Just go to Google Scholar and look at the citations that article is carrying. There are some articles with impossible citations, 10,000, 70,000. But any article that has citations, for example, of 100 and above, you must pause and give it respect. So establishing parameters related to publication date and language, of course, is English, to maintain the relevance and scope of the literature review. So you need to say, I want articles over the last 5 years, but include any seminal papers in that area. So you are actually setting up inclusion criteria that will reduce your search effort. Assessing the quality of literature, so evaluating the quality of literature to ensure the included sources contribute to the overall credibility of the review. I just want to give you a simple one. Just take that article, take it to Google Scholar, and see the number of citations. That's a very good criteria for inclusion. But remember, I said there is also gray literature that is not even published and therefore has no citations. And by the way, me, I like it that way, because you can't be doing a PhD and you expect things to be neatly packaged. No. Some of you are saying, but he seems to be emphasizing credible refereed journal articles, and then he's talking about gray literature. Yeah, of course, that's what I'm doing. I am disturbing your equilibrium, your intellectual equilibrium as a person. And how you come out of this disturbance is what then makes you the scholar, the PhD scholar. You'll also need to establish rigorous criteria for exclusion, not just inclusion, but exclusion. You have to find out how to exclude literature that does not align with the research objectives or is of low relevance. So you simply have a topic, you have pulled out the key items, the key words, and that will be a basis for your exclusion. You can exclude literature which is beyond 5 years, for example. You'll exclude literature that is essentially qualitative. Maybe you want literature studies that adopted a mixed methods or a quantitative method or a qualitative method. Considering potential biases and conflicts of interest, you will find articles that are very biased. And I've read many articles from the West about the African context that are so biased, even without subjecting them to their worthiness, you already don't want this to be part of your literature, part of your mindset. I want you to insist that one of the best ways of establishing a criteria for exclusion is the methodology and study design. So reviewing the methodology and study design of literature to identify any limitations that may lead to exclusion. So if I'm going to read this article and the research design does not align to the overall methodology of my study, I exclude it. So the exclusion criteria, one of the one of the tools you use for exclusion is, of course, the methodology and design. And I would like you to note that as you read your articles, whether that holds or doesn't hold. Then number 4, critical evaluation of the selected literature. Very important. Analyzing the relevance of the literature. How is it relevant to the research question? So the evaluation will focus on the extent to which the literature addresses the research question and contributes to the study. So are you seeing what is in chapter 1 is being threaded into chapter 2? That the research questions will help you in scoping the literature. So we look at applicability to the research content, how applicable the literature is to the specific research context and its potential impact on the study. How does the literature integrate with and contributes to existing knowledge? And identifying any gaps, limitations, or biases within the selected literature that need to be addressed. Ladies and gentlemen, you become that doctor of philosophy person when you are able to construct an authentic, engaging, and well thought out chapter 2 of your study. I know at master's level you sneaked away with copying and pasting tons of material that had no meaning, because I've had this over and over again. Students saying, you don't have to worry. Don't worry. Supervisors don't read chapter 2. They just look at it and pass it and go to chapter 3, chapter 1 and chapter 3. Those are the people who are killing the African aspirations. Evaluating the methodology and research design, assessment of research methodologies. So you critically analyze the methodologies used in the selected literature to assess their rigor and validity. Please, when you get an article, spend time in the section under research design and methodology. Does it align to your research questions? Will it give you the pathway to collect data that is valid? The overall research design. Do you know I've seen theses come through and somebody is in the defense and you ask them, what is the design here of your research? First of all, even the philosophical underpinnings, they don't know. When it comes to the design itself, they are mixed up between qual and quant and mixed. And you can see they are mixed up because of even how they are doing their population and sampling. Tells you this person has no idea of the design they're going to use and the tools for data analysis. So data collection methods and the appropriateness for the research objectives. So some of your research objectives will be calling for large samples. When I come to read your chapter 3, you are very deliberate with purposive sampling. I know this person, the design is not figured out. And why is it not figured out? Is because their literature review was not well thought out. So I really would like us to be very careful, because looking at the methodology and research design of the articles you're going to encounter begins to direct you to where you want to go with your own study. Also reflect on data analysis techniques employed in the literature and their impact on the findings. So now I hope at this level, you don't just read an article. There are things you're looking for, and you are highlighting them. And you are, of course, digitally highlighting or physically, and then you are sending them into your database for later reference. I want you, as you read your articles, to critique the theoretical framework. Evaluation of the theoretical framework. And I'm going to give you, we are going to go through a case study today. Evaluation of theoretical underpinnings, assessing the theoretical foundations of the literature and their relevance to the research topic. So remember how we shall package our literature review in chapter 2. We'll have an introduction, we'll have literature related to the dependent variable, we'll have literature related to the independent variable, we shall have literature related to the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. And before you do that, you must have a theoretical framework, because it is the one that bridges between the independent and dependent variables. So as you read those articles, can you evaluate the theoretical underpinnings? Can you look at the conceptual framework, examining the conceptual framework used in the literature to determine their coherence and applicability. So some of us blindly write the conceptual framework, but we have not interrogated several conceptual frameworks from the literature or from the studies in the area where you are entering. My friend, you must have respect for those who came before you in that area. So don't masquerade that you know. No, you don't know. You want to learn from what was done here and then develop new thinking. I want you to be bold enough to critique theoretical perspectives. So critically analyzing the theoretical perspectives presented in the literature and the implications for the study. So don't be shy. Come out boldly and critique the theoretical frameworks and tell me this is the one I'm using. You know, when some of you tell me, Prof, how many theories would be in my PhD? I worry about this aspect. You have not engaged in critiquing the theoretical frameworks so that you know why you'd use one, two, or three, or you just use one. Because you'll have seen this theoretical framework will actually hold my variables of the study, or will support my central phenomenon if it is a qualitative study. Identification of theoretical gaps, identifying any gaps or inconsistencies in the theoretical framework that require further consideration. By the way, some of the best theses I have read and examined, particularly from the Republic of South Africa. I mean, I'm an external examiner at Pretoria and Cape Town. Many people can just take this for their thesis, looking at the theoretical gaps in that area of study, and then building to come up with models. That's what a good PhD can or should do. This one, I will leave this to your supervisor. The supervisor should be able to assess the author's credibility and authority, and you can do it through several ways. The citations is one of the best ones. But also, if I look at the theoretical framework or the theory is not holding in that study, if I look at the methodology and I think it won't give us results that are valid, and the research design, I begin to question the author's credibility and authority. So assessing the expertise and credentials is very important. That's why I've told you, if you're talking of management and you quote Peter Drucker, people are on board. And in your various fields, you have authorities. And then, of course, you're looking at biases, and you don't want to introduce biases in your own study. And just look at the examination of research affiliations that this person is attached to. I want to say, I will not expect much from you at this level, but I expect your supervisor to be able to assess the author's credibility and authority. But you can use simple criteria also to be able to say, no, this is not a very valid research article in terms of findings that I've seen. I want you to reflect on the implications of future research, identifying the implications of the literature for future research, directions and scholarly contributions. Have that in mind because you need this in your chapter 5. You'll have to give us implications for future research. So you'll be looking at practical applications. You'll be looking at potential research extensions, particularly multidisciplinary, and you'll be looking at evaluation of the impact of the research. So as you read those articles, you'll have this template, these slides, and you're able to see where does this one sit. And when you get the implications, put them in your database because you need them in your chapter 5. That's what I'm saying. Then synthesizing, synthesizing and organizing the findings of your literature. We'll run through this very briefly. I think here, to synthesize and organize, identify the key themes and patterns, create a coherent narrative. How do you get a coherent narrative? By synthesizing the findings. Yeah, so this one and this one and this one, when you synthesize, you create a clear understanding of the research landscape in your area. Evaluating the quality of evidence is important. Evaluating the quality of the evidence is important, sorry. And identifying the gaps and inconsistencies. Ladies and gentlemen, you read the literature review to see the gaps. And sometimes from those gaps, you'll find you consolidate your area of study. You know, if I'm doing literature, my findings will be future research. So if I find gaps and inconsistencies, you might find gaps and inconsistencies you are not even thought about. And now you think, but this is an area I can now go in to study. Proper citation and referencing, I think this you have done before, but I'll just mention that when you are doing citation and referencing, Daystar, APA 7th edition, the significance of accurate citations, very important. It gives credit to the original authors, and you are not accused of plagiarism. I always tell people, keep citing until you become an expert in an area. Just keep citing, then you'll also be cited. Avoid inadvertent plagiarism. And you know we have mechanisms in Daystar before your thesis, even your proposal goes to the next level, it is passed through the Turnitin to detect the level of plagiarism. We're not saying you'll be zero. No, we have an index. I think Chongo, our associate dean in School of Business, knows the index, the percentage we allow of commonness between your work and other people's work. Establishing credibility and authenticity. I think citations and references enhance the credibility and authenticity of the literature. And then complying with academic standards, adhering to specific styles, like us is 7th edition APA, and that is within our guidelines, and you'll be expected to go through that. And then referencing is detailed here. You can go through it. I know you are put through with the librarians, but selecting the appropriate citation style, you pick the one your university is using, using citation management tools, Zotero, and we don't really use a lot of EndNote, but the School of Law does. They have their own citation ways. So if you are in the School of Law, if you're doing the LLM there, the citation will be different. Ensuring accuracy in bibliographic details. We stick on referencing or references and not bibliographies generally. Because a bibliography, you actually will tell us about where you found the reference, but we are not as specific as we would like you to be. And regularly updating your references. That's what I said. So when you start your chapter 1, you have your references, and as you go on, you'll keep on updating them as you get new material as you embrace other studies and so on. So periodically updating and cross-checking maintains the relevance and accuracy of the literature review. Implementing, I think, sorry, let me get this. Addressing challenges and common errors in citation and referencing. We shall not belabor this because you have already done, but you'll have this presentation. I think over-reliance on secondary sources can diminish the originality and depth of your literature review. So please be very careful with secondary sources and try to deal with primary sources as much as possible. Understanding the nuances of indirect citation, and this one is very common in qualitative studies, so you must understand the nuances and guidelines for indirect citations. You are not citing Ayiro, but you are citing the work of Ayiro in Ogola's article. You must be very careful. Managing multiple authors and sources, I'm sure you've been told how you are going to meticulously organize your referencing if you are more than one author, and then make sure that there are no discrepancies in citation styles. APA, 7th edition, full stop. So you don't bring in Chicago or the other formats of referencing. Ethical considerations and best practices in citation. So don't fake citations, because as I examine your thesis, if it is a soft copy, I'll just highlight the reference and then put a search, and then I know whether we are upholding academic integrity. Intellectual property rights also. So proper citation, you are playing it right in terms of intellectual rights. Don't misinterpret or misrepresent what you are reading. So accurate referencing will mitigate the risk of misinterpretation and misrepresentation. Acknowledge diverse perspectives and contribution. So inclusive citation practices is very important, and in the scholarly community. So that's what we'll expect as you work on your chapter 2. Thank you very much. And that sums up our thinking around the literature review. I want us to pause for 10 minutes, a break, and then when we come back at 7:51, we then get into a case study. Over to you, Dr. Mark.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. And I think questions and everything else can come through so that they can have the break for 10 minutes, and then we can be able to take through. But I think now, with last week's knowledge on literature, last seminar on structuring of chapter 2, and now going to exact on how to go about it, I think this is really important for the students. So either you can type it there, or you can, as we get out the break, then we can come through. You don't leave the forum, you just get something, grab. I think people had asked for this break so that they can always have, so we have it for you. 10 minutes. It is something that also had been requested by you, so that now we can come. So let's take the 10 minutes, get something, either something to eat or drink, and then come back to class. Don't leave the forum. Then you can come with some question. Thank you. I think I pause, submit that. Then we shall continue on YouTube, what that means. Not stop, but Linda, how to access the notes? I don't know if Prof has shared on email yet. I have to check. If he has not shared, then once he shares, I can be able to share, Linda.
Dr. Mwaka, can I just quickly ask before I also just take a quick break? I've not submitted my chapter 1 yet, but I will. But now that we're already on literature review, are we expected now to submit both chapter 1 and chapter 2? Or we just do chapter 1 first?
We really wanted chapter 1 first, was important. And usually we encourage the whole writing in that format, for not just for this class, but we've been encouraging students. Because when you get it in the correctly, your chapter 1, of course, before your chapter 1 would have reviewed your literature. Then now you are now informed by that literature to write chapter 1. Chapter 2 becomes not a very difficult chapter. And since Prof, because you're many, we are looking at going through chapter 1, and then we shall have other people also taking up chapter 2 and chapter 3 to support the writing. But chapter 1 for right now, we prefer going chapter by chapter. And I know that there's no way you can write chapter 1 without reviewing literature. Then our literature review itself comes in terms of objectives and other things that you need to meet as a chapter 2. So remember, like things like conceptual framework, theoretical framework, all of them are in chapter 2, yet we introduce them in chapter 1 as our last kind of subsections of chapter 1, mentioning, not necessarily going into details. And in chapter 2, they pick it very deeply, as we go. So preferably chapter 1 for those who've already submitted. And we don't have many submissions for sure. Quite a number of people have not submitted.
And just one last question. Yeah, the only thing I'm struggling with is I have a sense of what goes into chapter 1. I'm just not sure what's like the accurate format or structure. Is it okay to reach out for you to like share an example of like a chapter 1? There's those nitty-gritties. That's what I'm just not sure about yet.
I remember sharing here.
Okay.
Yes, we went through chapter 1 literally. And
maybe I wasn't in that class.
Yeah, but you can get through the what is it? I always try to label YouTube this by what it is. Like now, I'll just continue saying literature review part 2, so that you can go. But we did, yeah, and yet even what Prof provide is not even different from what is in the handbook. The only difference that the handbook may not ask you to introduce your chapter, your theoretical and conceptual variables in chapter 2, but Prof advises that you introduce them as it's kind of the last subsection of chapter 1 before you do a chapter summary, where you introduce and just mention this study will be informed by this theory or these theories. And then, of course, you'll mention something to do with the main variables of this proposal will be, and then you bring them. But now in chapter 2, you'll go into detail, because chapter 2, you'll have your introduction. We'll want to see a theoretical framework. We want to see your literature review, general and empirical literature review. We also now want to see your conceptual framework itself into details. And then now we'll see your discussions around the concepts and how they merge before you close up your chapter 2. So yes, we did this, and actually there was a record, and I think, Rowena, unless you missed the class, we already covered even the structure. And even I remember literally even just putting it down, what that means. So you can go back to it. But
okay, thanks, Doc. I'll catch up with that one.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Hussein.
And chapter 1, I'm now writing. I have started writing. What is the maximum and minimum pages? Maybe maximum and minimum pages for chapter 1.
Oh, no. It's very deep. I can never talk about pages, but I can talk about sections. For example, I know like chapter, like problem statement. If you go beyond 1.5 page, or it is a lot. I can talk about, but I cannot be able to say this is the minimum, no. Because remember, studies are very different, we define that, but there are certain obvious way, like now the background to the problem study, you look at it and you see, we're not talking about 2 pages like about there. We're not going to so many pages. People write so many pages. You find somebody writing 20 pages of an introduction and background to the problem, which is just outrageous and redundancy and unnecessary. So there is nothing I can talk about, but I can be specific some of things. Objectives can't go beyond, for example, you're setting like 4 objectives. So we cannot say that, chapter 1 is 20 pages, chapter 2 is 30. Studies are very different, things are very different, but we know that certain areas of the writing, like in chapter 1, you cannot write, just even think like chapter 3, you can't write research design and you're writing 10 pages of research design. That doesn't make sense. But we can say, for example, problem statement, at least up to maybe maximum 1.5. Some people stretch up to 2. We can talk about maybe something like introduction and background to the problem, specific number of pages, but we cannot be able to say chapter 1 is this pages and chapter 2 now.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah.
How many minutes remaining?
We still have, I think there should be 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay, we can invite comments, questions, apprehensions.
All right. Let me see if people, how we can say, Linda, we can access notes. I think I'd responded to that. Yes, Millie, you have a question. You can go ahead, please.
Thank you. My question is, in the research I'm trying to do, actually, In fact, some of the literature, the few literature that you see that speaks specifically to the CDF says it's an ingenious fund that is very rare. In Africa, I think so far it's only Kenya and probably Zambia. Actually, Kenya borrowed from Zambia and has done it much better than Zambia. So other than the assessments of CDF, there's very scanty literature because I'm trying to link CDF with the political theory of separation of powers, because what is being used against it is the issue of separation of powers. But it is an excellent fund. Yesterday, I actually saw one of my friends who is a minister in Malawi was reporting that they're considering, they have a draft bill for CDF. Many people are coming into Kenya to copy CDF. And because it's a working, probably if you ask me, the best working development model, but we want to kill it because of separation of powers. So does that not therefore mean that there is a problem with that theory? But when I'm doing my research around separation of powers, the angle I'm looking at, which is that we are looking at 1, 2, 3, legislation, representation, and oversight. There's a lot on that, but there's nothing on whether there's a possibility of not just fusion, but giving MPs the role to do development directly. What's wrong with making MPs do development work, for instance? Why do we make it look like it is a sin in Exodus chapter 20? It's not in the Bible. So why is it? Because somebody in France in 1786 said it's a model that works, or it's a theory that works. Is it a theory that still works now? So when you have such a situation, how do you go about it, where you have so much gap in literature?
Yeah. Okay.
Especially in relation to a theory, like a concept or theory like separation of powers, in relation to the aspect that I'm looking at, giving MPs a fourth role of development.
Thank you very much. I think that's an interesting aspect, and I have the following. First of all, you should not be limited with the fact that the literature is limited. What you're chasing here is a knowledge gap. So just by it being a knowledge gap constitutes an area of study. Secondly, we have to delve. I don't know who is your supervisor, but we have to deal in detail with the concept of separation of powers, because that is the essence of the tension. And we have to look at models and the latitude that has been witnessed in terms of separation of powers. Then we will deal with the contradictions when members of parliament then come to execute. What are the inhibitions and what are the contradictions therein, if any? We'll also deal with, it's not just separation of powers or sharing control of resources. There are also apprehensions because of the very essence of democracy. What are the apprehensions that are related to democratic processes when the representative becomes, in quotes, the executor or the manager of resources? Can Honorable Mili are you going to carry your biases as you go back to your constituency, depending on the demographics of voting, for example? So we'll deal with that. Then we will come to a CDF model. And in this CDF model, we're going to look at public financing and accountability and reference it to the finance bill. And it is the work of your supervisor. If I was your supervisor, then I would simulate, I would do a model simulated and putting in all the factors surrounding CDF and see the outcomes that would then be our argument for this model. So there is so much as you go through this thesis. But let's start with chapter 1. And we don't want to define where we are going. We will walk through this, as I've said, starting with the introduction and the genesis, and then what is the problem statement. I think this one is very clear. And then move on until we are now arguing for this model. And we have to do simulations of the same. Give us the perfect model. Just using econometrics, I can give you a model, the perfect model for CD. In fact, I was very, I want you to convince me. Why are you clouding CDF with other things just for it to get credibility? I saw Parliament was passing several things around CDF, and yet this entity is supposed to be very clearly articulated such that we increase the accountability level around the CDF model. Because if you asked me, it has succeeded. I have witnessed development in Likuyani constituency, courtesy of CDF. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maka,
Is there any?
Dr. Maka?
Sure. Do you have any, someone, okay. Those who've submitted, we have, remember you're submitting your work to Magdalene and you can copy me. It is easier for us. So don't submit to me alone. Magdalene is the one compiling all the work that is being sent. How is a supervisor assigned? Millie, I think you can actually react to Profs. And then, of course, our supervisor is assigned. Of course, different schools have different ways of assigning supervisors, but of course, as we know, this cohort, we have you, most of you are having Prof as your first supervisor, and the second supervisor will be determined by different capacities or in terms of their strength of area of knowledge. For example, if for mental health, Prof is there to be there because of the writing and the research and other, then I could come in to support because of my area of strength, I could come in as a second supervisor. However, schools have different also options of allocating the second, but usually the first one, the knowledge, at least the supervisor must be well conversed. One of the supervisors must be very well conversed and grounded in research methods. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to even write to your chapters 1 and 2 and 3, for example. And then, of course, the other supervisor can come in the area of strength in that particular topic you're doing. For example, if you're doing on policy, or if you're doing on leadership, or if you're doing on mental health, or if you're doing on communication. Yeah. Is there any other question? And I will be posting as we continue, I'll be sharing every journey of this seminar where we've gone through like how chapter 1 needs to be structured, what is required of chapter 1. I'll be giving you that particular, for those who have not been able to review, you can review later, but also you have the notes, and also we've shared the templates with you. So it shouldn't be a problem. That's how people are writing chapter 1, Rowena. There's no way they write chapter 1 because we gave the specifications of chapter 1.
I've sent the presentation to you.
Yes, I've actually received and I've already shared both on their emails and also on their WhatsApp.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Any other question? Because I want
Linda, you had a question?
I don't have much time. Yeah.
No, Dr. I just wanted to find out how I could access the notes because I'm neither in the WhatsApp group. I just joined as a PhD student, but not of this class. So I'm disadvantaged in that way because then I cannot really access the notes, but I would want to tap in from this very, fountain of knowledge as well.
Okay.
So I don't know whether I should share. Maybe you could send me directly, or how do
No, as I've sent the rest, race 850, I've copied you, Linda.
Oh, nice. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Yes, Nathan?
Thank you, Prof. I wish to interest my colleague Millie just to look at the working of the Member of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme in India. A very interesting way of a semblance of our CDF, the way it works. If she would like to look at international literature around what she's researching. Thank you.
Very good, and that's a good spirit. When you are doing literature, all of us will encounter some interesting material that isn't of interest to you. And then you remember one of us in the class is dealing with this area. Just forward it to them. You have their emails. That's how we help each other.
Yeah. I will do so, Prof. Thank you.
Okay. Let's carry on. Allow me to carry on, please. I want us to look at a case study. There are two case studies. I think because of time, I'll deal with one, and the other one we shall also post it to you for reference. But I was working through this case study over the weekend, this illustration, and I thought it will make us think together. Sometimes my getting the slides on your side, I have to go to Nyangori PhD Mission Center and pray, please, 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 God, help me get this slide up there. I do a lot of juggling. But I hope it is there now. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll move through it very fast because I've already covered the essentials of a literature review chapter. And I want you to see that when I was working on this, I took a literature review on the finance bill, the famous finance bill. And I want to show you an analysis of related studies, gaps, methodologies, and framework. So I want us to use this as a case study, and anytime we are doing our work, we'll go back to this. Those from Kenya, this was a big moment, and I think I would love to see, maybe not with your cohort, but in future, some research done around how a legislative piece like a finance bill can cause so much traction and mobilization, the social mobilization, and what is in it for us to have learned. So I'm going to look at related studies, gaps, methodologies, and frameworks. Now, so we'll do a definition. What I'm doing is what I want you to do with your chapter 2. So I'm going to do definition of the finance bill, importance of the finance bills in fiscal policy and governance, and then purpose of the literature review. An overview of literature on finance bills, because you're talking about the finance bill. A brief description of the evolution of finance bills. And so if I was Millie, I'll be planting CDF. Overview of literature on CDF, the evolution of CDF, and key themes found in literature, in this case on the finance bill on taxation, public expenditure, and fiscal accountability. So I give related studies with complete citations because you need to look at those studies if you're going to write about the finance bill. So the first study you encounter is taxation and fiscal policy, and that article, the impact of finance bills on tax revenue, a comparative analysis. So what am I doing? I'm driving your mind into saying, in writing your chapter 2, you must first of all bring out these ones. Related studies with complete citations. Related studies. And what does this one do? This one says, this study analyzes the variation in tax revenues before and after the enactment of finance bills in several countries, highlighting the efficacy of various tax provisions. Then, study 2. So I'm driving your mind towards literature review is about studies related, contextualizing your topic. Then there is study on public expenditure, assessment of effects of finance bills on public expenditure patterns, and this is the public finance review. And by the way, let me just make this correction. If this is a journal article, APA, it would imply this, that is then put in italics like that, so that we know, once I see this in italics, I know this is a journal. So this article was published in this journal. You change into that. So the research explores how different finance bills influence government spending decisions, particularly in social sectors such as health and education. You see, that's why I keep saying we develop, sometimes I have this impression, because of the heat around the finance bill, I did go and research around the finance bill. And what I asked myself, did our people at Treasury do adequate literature review or research around finance bills in relation to public expenditure? The answer is no. They couldn't have, because they would have avoided a lot of the traps we are having. This one, Study of Taxation and Fiscal Policy, you can see this is a journal. It is in italics. So this one was also supposed to be italicized. No, this one, the Journal of Economic Policy, and the article itself is Impact of Finance Bills on Tax Revenue, a comparative analysis. If you read this and you are in Treasury and you are crafting the finance bill, maybe you'll be more informed to avoid many of the traps that we saw ourselves in. Then there is a study of public expenditure. I've talked about that, but look at this. This research explores how different finance bills influence government spending decisions, particularly in social sectors such as health and education. The third one, a cross-country analysis. This is by Gomez and Patel, Finance Bills Across Borders, across national study of fiscal policy instruments. And this one, because of APA, I didn't have time, or I didn't do it when I was writing this. It's supposed to be in italicized. It has to be italicized like that, because it's a journal article. Now, what does this paper do? This comparative study examines finance bills in multiple countries, analyzing their impact on fiscal stability and economic growth. And by the way, these are just articles, they're not books. So if I was one of those mandarins at Treasury, I would have read a lot of this literature and briefed the cabinet or my minister adequately to avoid the crisis that we were pushed in. For very things that could have been avoided if that process was informed by research. But what am I saying here? How did I get to these articles? This one, the study on taxation and fiscal policy, the study on public expenditure, the cross-country analysis. How did I get to this? I simply went to my topic. And it is the finance bill, and I looked for related studies with complete citations. And these ones just begin to come out. And now you read them, you look at the various areas, and you pick out aspects that will help you with your conceptual and theoretical framework, and you move on. Now, then there was the long-term impact study by Chen and Peterson, the long-term labor market effects on changes in finance bill, evidence from a panel study. You see, this is what labor market effects of changes in finance bills. And this is supposed to be italicized. This is a journal, and it is the economic research report like that. So here, utilizing longitudinal data, this research assesses the long-term effects of finance bills on employment rates and labor force participation. And this, by the way, this would have actually informed us as arguments before the public and even before Parliament, why our finance bill was looking the way it was looking. And then this was interesting, this study by Wilkins and Coffey, the role of digital technologies in shaping modern finance bills, a review of current trends. This was in the Journal of Digital Finance, for example. And this one you can italicize. So the study discusses how digitalization, and advancements in financial technologies influence the formulation and implementation of finance bills. Do you know, I was actually astonished because we would have done modeling because of advances in financial technologies, including AI, and we would have come out with the inference of how we craft the finance bill and the implementation of that finance bill. I would be interested to know how far we went in this direction. And then I found this article, it's also popped up, Incorporating Gender Perspectives in Finance Bills, a Critical Analysis. This is the Gender, Economy, and Social and Society Journal. Again, italicized because it's APS version 7. The research examines how finance bills have addressed or neglected gender equity and social justice issues in their provisions and outcomes. I'm trying to say this. If our formulation was evidence-based, a lot of those dilemmas we got into would have been not just detected, but would have been used for argument or would have cautioned us in the direction we were going. So those are, I've just given examples of studies. And now you can see I'm sitting around the topic. Then the next aspect was identified gaps in the literature. After I've read those studies, you now become knowledgeable. In fact, you begin to be the authority. And the gaps were this: lack of empirical studies on long-term impacts of finance bills, limited integration of gender and social equity perspectives, insufficient analysis of digital finance implications in recent bills. I would really be interested in how we are using technologies to analyze finance implications as we position our bills. And if we had all that information and the country was made aware, even points of severeness, or if there's such an English word, or points of tension would have been addressed as addendums to the finance bills. Then methodologies, introduction of mixed methods approaches, combining qualitative case studies and with quantitative analysis. So in reading these papers, these were the methodologies. And this is what I want you to tell me. This is what I want you to package in your literature review. Now, how I wish our people in Treasury, and I'm sure, I'm not saying they're not using it, how I wish they could tell us, what does the econometric modeling predict about future finance bills? And really, if you have modeling, people will understand. But you know, modeling also gives you assumptions. A model can give you the assumption that there is enhanced transparency and accountability of expenditures surrounding social aspects such as health and education. So those assumptions then become the areas of argument for politicians to make sure that this bill will only come to what the model is telling us if these conditions are met. I think if we took that to the public discourse, we would be in a different position as a country, and we would come out with finance bills that would impact on our economic well-being. There is also implementation of comparative studies across different political systems. So again, just referring to the CDF study, we will have a method. We will do modeling around CDF, and we'll look at comparative studies. You have said Zambia. We have talked of India. There might not be CDF exact, but CDF similar as an approach. Then we have examples of conducting literature on finance bills. How are you going to conduct literature in your area of study? First of all, systematic reviews of the literature, or systematic literature reviews, how they can identify trends over time. Very, very important. Meta-analysis. You can do a meta-analysis combining results from multiple studies to draw broader conclusions, particularly if you are working in an area where a lot of research has been done. And then data mining techniques. How are you going to get your literature? Analyze large databases, in this case from government records and audits, to have that data for drafting, or not even drafting, but for ensuring that the finance bill is credible and is not going to get resistance from the public. Then we have the conceptual framework. So these are attributes. I'm actually giving you attributes of your chapter 2. The conceptual framework. Look at this case. We have theory of fiscal federalism. Federalism is kind of devolution. Nigeria, the US, Kenya, and even India to some extent because of the provinces. So you have the theory of managing money, how finance bills affect state and central relations. Stakeholder theory, identifying how various stakeholders influence finance bill outcomes. Very interesting. Treasury comes up with a finance bill, but it hasn't built a stakeholder constituency like the departments of economics in our universities should have been participating, should have been listed to give credibility to the process. And then public choice theory, examining the motivations behind legislative changes in finance bills. So if you read all this, you will easily come up with the variables of your study, and you'll be able to conceptualize them as you describe to us your chapter 2. Then we have theoretical frameworks. So you discuss theories relevant to finance bill analysis, relevant to your study area. So there is the political economy perspective, influence of political structures on finance bill. Then there's institutional economics, role of institutions in shaping fiscal policies. This one Kenya has failed because we have very strong research bodies in the country or internationally. We also have economic departments and finance business schools, which can be assembled and look at these theories and conceptualize a framework for developing our financial bill. Future directions in your literature review, suggestions for further research, addressing identified gaps, and opportunities to explore the impact of technology advancements on finance bill. This really, really excites me. It really excites me, the impact of technology advancements on finance bills. In fact, I've done one of my masters is in economics of education. I'm now very interested in looking at the finance bill this time and pulling out the education sector and subjecting it to econometrics and to see whether that model will give us some of the funding models we are struggling with, the desired ones. Then after that, you do a summary of your literature. So you recap importance of finance bills in economic governance, your literature. You'll have a summary of the significant findings and gaps in the literature. Remember, the last page of your literature review chapter is a summary, not of the studies, but of the significant findings, and then the gaps therein. And then you'll call to action for scholars to engage in more interdisciplinary approaches. What am I saying? As you end your chapter 2, you must have a summary which then amplifies the gap for your study and future studies. You must have references. Please assemble references against each chapter. Then at the end, you combine them and pull them away to the appendix. So list of all studies and literature cited. And we can show these studies, although they are fictional examples, to illustrate how to cite actual research in your literature review. But that is the frame that you would use. And make sure to research real articles, journals, or publications related to finance bills for accurate referencing. What we want to see in your literature review is the conceptual framework. So the conceptual framework in this case would be taxation and public spending. So you must have a conceptual framework for your area of study. And this framework focuses on the relationship between finance bills, taxation levels, public expenditure, and socio-economic outcomes. So these ones are those ones will be those ones there are your independent variables. Those ones. This one, socioeconomic outcomes, will be your, sorry, I need to post this. These ones would be your, or will be your dependent variable. So I'm saying you should pick these variables and relate them to your study. You see, as I go through the literature review, I'll be looking at where are the studies, where you spend a lot of the time. Where is the summary? But did this student have a conceptual framework of the studies? What are the key variables? Look at here, the key variables. Dependent variables. Here, we have listed them: tax policies, provisions of the finance bill, economic conditions, and so on. And the dependent, of course, you don't carry all this. I picked one: socioeconomic outcomes, poverty rates, quality of public services. So you have independent and dependent variables. What am I saying? They are in chapter 2, so you are talking to us about them. You are not just listing, you are talking about them. So, are you seeing what I'm saying, that our chapter 2, the literature review, will consist of the introduction, you'll talk about the literature surrounding the variables. So I'll expect literature on independent variables and dependent variables. Then I'll expect literature on relationships. How does the finance bill influence tax policies and economic conditions, which in turn impact government revenue? So I'll expect literature that talks about the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. And you can see increased government revenue can lead to higher public expenditure on services, affecting socioeconomic outcomes positively. By the way, this is a catch-22 situation, and somehow we don't see it. If you look at the finance bill influences the tax policies and economic conditions, which in turn impact government revenue. You know, if you put too much taxation, it doesn't mean you're going to get more money. No, and that's the assumption I hear all the time from Treasury in Kenya. We are increasing tax because we want to support our services. But if you have too much taxation, you stifle the economic conditions, and in turn, government revenue fizzles, becomes small. But if you have a tax regime that spars expenditure or spars the economic conditions, people are able to engage in all kinds of things, the revenue to government increases. Increased government revenue will lead to higher public expenditure on services because government has money, and that will improve our socioeconomic well-being. But this is not part of the literature chapter 2. This one I've become a Kenyan. But I'm saying your literature must tell me conceptual framework, key variables, relationships. Then your literature should have a theoretical framework. Which theory are you using? And look at here, I picked here for an example, this fiscal federalism. Why? Because it provides a theoretical basis for understanding the assignment of tax and expenditure responsibilities across different levels of government. So that is my anchoring theory. And I'm able to justify it in my literature. And the key variables, I talked about them. I'm repeating them here. Relationships. If this is the theory, I'm assuming this is the theory, this one. So this will be the key variables. And you can see level of government, independent, intergovernmental grants, the CDF and the others, institutional framework, laws governing fiscal accountability and budget processes. And then the dependent outcome is efficiency of resource allocation, which we are struggling with in the country, fiscal equity, fairness in the distribution of tax burdens and public expenditure. There must be fairness. And then accountability, public trust and transparency. They become the dependent variables. If this is your theory, this one. And then relationships. This theory, this fiscal federalism affects how finance bills are structured with implications for resource allocation and accountability between different government layers. And then variations in intergovernmental grants can influence local budgeting, leading to differences in public service delivery and impacts on community development outcomes. So it's not just about the finance bill. There are so many nuances, narratives that give you a solid finance bill. So I would like your literature to talk about, if this is your theory, you now talk about the relationship. Then you do a summary. Then application. in research. And then you go to identified gaps in the literature. So for example, in this one, just like in Kenya, lack of empirical studies on long-term impacts of financial bills. And then we have limited integration of gender and social equity perspectives. Then we have insufficient analysis. And this is the main culprit in the People's Republic of Kenya, this one. The main culprit, insufficient analysis of digital finance implications in recent bills. And then new methodologies in your literature review, if this is your theory, we have introduction of mixed methods approach. We know why. And maybe I can just indicate combining qualitative and quantitative research methods enhances the robustness of findings by providing different perspectives. And then a mixed method study may first conduct interviews with policymakers on finance bill provisions, followed by quantitative analysis of economic data to assess the outcome of those provisions. So that's why you would use a mixed methods. Then use of econometric modeling, and they're supposed to predict the economic impact of changes. I doubt whether we engage in this modeling, but if we do, we are not allowing the public to know. So researchers could create econometric models to forecast effects of GDP, tax revenue, and public spending resulting from proposed changes in a finance bill, using historical data to validate their models. And then implication of comparative analysis. Please look at other countries, see how they have fared on. And then we have examples of conducting literature on finance, bills, systematic review. Please look at your studies related to the bills and identify trends and significant findings. Look at this one. Researchers might conduct a systematic review of studies published in the last 20 years on finance bills to identify themes, gaps, and methodologies used, providing an overview of evolution of the fiscal policy debate. So you can review the literature, you can do a meta-analysis of the studies therein, and then compile your chapter 2. That is the case study I'm exposing to you, and we are going to send it for reference. But I would like some comments. Does this shed some light on chapter 2 adequately? What are the worries? And then we'll close the session. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof, for this, and definitely looking just on the outline on how it's coming out clearly and what will consist chapter 2 is actually what Prof is discussing. It is not like it is it's one of, it's the heart of the document, because it holds the whole document together. Every reference of your chapters is a reference to chapter 2. So basically, this is a very important chapter because it gives you your impression. Like I've said there, when Prof is talking about the gaps, remember he talked about the 7 gaps that literally most researchers will be trying to address and find in their studies. Then you go back to that. What is your study trying to address? Remember that this is the gap that you're going to address, and therefore informs even the type of the methodology you're going to use so that you can be able to address those kind of gaps. So basically, literature reviews are very important chapter and must be done very well, not a dumping site. Linda, you are ahead writing. Does it resonate with you? Because I know you've begun writing. Is this, you can help others see? Is it really now resonating? Are you understanding this as others are going to write this chapter 2?
Yeah, absolutely does, because for instance, when my research in my readings, I found there was a gap in the research design. Based on my topic, I found that most of the research was qualitative studies, and there was a gap in the research design, mainly in the form of the quasi-experimental design. And so that informed the gap of my study and also informed everything around it, because then I was able to argue for instance, why I'm using purposive sampling in my study. I'm able to argue around that. So the gap pretty much informed everything else around my study, because it then speaks to your overall research. Without the gap, then you cannot really move and conceptualize everything else around that.
All
So
right.
yes, in that
Yeah.
sense, yes.
Thank you. Others, Linda's been in this session for 3 years now. So I know she was here last year and she's here this year. That tells you how people still keep following up, because this is helping her write her document, because she attended all the seminars last year. She's again joined this year, and yet she's just begun writing her proposal, and she's already almost. Have you defended your proposal?
I'm hoping to defend in the next 2 weeks, probably.
Yes. So basically, she's resonating. I can tell you she's been, in fact, for her research, her writing has been informed by these seminars. That is why she doesn't miss, because I know Linda. So she basically has been moving with Prof throughout while he was teaching the masters, and she moved literally on this class. And she testified in one of the classes that if she never attended these seminars, it would have been very difficult. I don't know if, Linda, I'm saying the truth. It would have been difficult for you to write your proposal.
Yes, they've been like magic. This is just I that's why I'm not a member of this class, but I know that I can always speak something from Prof's class, and I've always wished that he's in our he comes to teach us in psychology, and if the milk doesn't come to you, go to where the milk is. So that's what I try to do. He's not really our teacher in psychology, but then I follow him wherever he goes. I just tap into that.
All right. Thank you. Rachel, you would like to say something? I know you've posted, and also Honorable Millie, you've also, Millie, you've also, you wanted to bring it clearly? And then anybody else, what is it that you're getting? If you can't post, you can just open your mic. Rachel is our class president for this particular group.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayiro. Professor Laban, thank you so much. I really enjoyed following the literature review. I think that is where sometimes most of the challenge is just bringing in literature to beef up the topic and to speak to the topic. I like, and I know from our class, from our ethics class, we are always told that no, you cannot have citations from beyond 2020. So I'm really happy, and I enjoyed the fact that most of the citations are very current. They really speak to the topic. So really, thank you very much. This has been very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Millie, you were trying to appreciate something. You want to raise it, and let me hear the voices as well.
Hello, me, Dr. Ayiro.
Yes, is that who? Alex? Alice, yeah.
Esther.
Yeah. Okay,
Esther.
Okay.
Yeah, I think as Honorable Millie comes on board, but just to appreciate, I think for me, it's just the understanding of how to conduct the literature review, especially with the myriad of studies that we have to undertake, so that you get the exact topics and studies previously done that really speak into the topic. So I really appreciate the process that is taken us through in terms of which studies to undertake, which analysis, first of all, to do in terms of identifying the ones that are relevant to the study that you'd want to undertake. And just the process of even just getting the citations right, so that you're able to go direct to the ones that really speak to you. So I really, Prof, this is just to appreciate. I think there's a lot of learning that has taken place this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, with deep gratitude.
Okay.
Thank you. Maybe just one or two comments and a question. One is, I think, to just thank Prof for a very good presentation that sets us on the right path. I think because I came late, I think I mentioned it in one other class that I was not aware that people are submitting. I'm hearing people chapter 1, blah blah blah. So I'm not aware. I'm not aware. I probably would have gone a little ahead, but now that I've caught up in class, I just wanted to know who am I getting in touch with what? Or is it a topic? Is it a concept? Is it a... Because I don't know at what level I am. Am I at proposal, at concept, at topic?
Okay.
And who am I reaching out to as a first step? Yeah, but also I just wanted to comment. I know the one Prof has given is an example to help us appreciate. But I thought other than the exclusion of the gender, for a study of the finance bill, it would be nice to look at one of the issues actually that created the biggest challenge to the finance bill, because we do finance bill every year and there's never been an issue except 2024. And it was because one of the main reasons, if you ask me, probably the heart of it was that for the first time, there was direct taxation over issues that touch on youth. And before we have avoided taxing youth, but we are taxing unemployed youth for the first time. We are taxing digital content. We are taxing shisha, things that touch directly on youth. And then we at the same time we didn't listen to their voices very, very carefully, even after doing that. So, and I think if you see this current year, Honorable Mbadi has tried to talk with the youth, even as he's doing the finance bill. So maybe that's for anybody writing, the issue of the youth is a very critical issue if you are examining the finance bill 2024. Thank you.
That's a valid point. Thank you very much. That's a valid point. I think first of all, I was the one receiving. We dealt with your topic and gave you feedback. So what I expect from you now is not a concept paper. I expect a chapter 1, an attempt at writing chapter 1, so that we get moving. And I promise to give everybody some feedback on the chapter 1, and chapter 2, as we bring in the other supervisors to help us with chapter 3, myself and them, and then I hand them over to work with you during data collection and deal with chapter 4 and 5. And there's cohort supervision so that everybody has that advantage. Everybody has a supervisor. You are not being left behind because they can't find a supervisor. So we'll use that method. So I would advise the student to submit their chapter 1. It doesn't matter how raw it is, and I'm advising all of you, submit your chapter 1. We ratified most of the topics. So bring in your chapter 1, let's look at it. And that's how you move. That's how you move. You don't keep dipping your big toe in the swimming pool on a cold day. You just jump in. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Let's hear Simon Tumbo Mel's voice, Simon, and anybody else. Simon, you're there? All right. Any other person, any male student? And you're in the same time with me here, probably, or even later, it could be probably around 2 a.m. where you are. Anne, are you awake, Kira? All right. Yes, Victoria. Go ahead, Victoria. I know, yeah, you had shared something on email. Yes, Victoria.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Just to echo my colleagues' sentiments on the session, very insightful. Mine will also come as a question, because I've also been trying to review my literature, even when I was doing chapter 1, on a study that I'm doing on assessing the institutional and policy determinants of community-based waste management for climate change mitigation. So I have noted many gaps, especially policy gaps, and as well as behavioral drivers. And yeah, just matters to do with also the institutional design capacity as well as implementation. And there is one gap that is really glaring, and it is a gap that deals with the EGH gases, emission of the gases, as well as the volumes. And I'm already looking at it, and I don't know, I think it may also maybe be a gap in my study. I don't know. I would just like advice on how perhaps to tackle that gap. Or now that I have these other gaps, is it okay to leave out one gap or just to deal with maybe specific gaps, or must I deal with all the gaps? Thank you.
Thank you. I think my advice is let me look at that chapter 1, but don't carry too much. It ceases to be a PhD study. A PhD study narrows to a very small area, but then you go into detail. So we'll look at it and we'll validate which gap we want to go with. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So I know you have another class coming up. The last question. Someone was talking. Sorry. That was Nayere. Were you talking?
Oh, thank you, Prof, for your paper. It's really an amazing template or a roadmap for us who will be attempting chapter 2. Even I wish we could have had a peep in your recommendations, but in most democracies like ours, normally such an issue which touches on policy, we have some institutions like Knowledge Commission, some think tanks. I don't know if we had a think tank that could advise the president before he moves ahead with this finance bill. In our country, do we have such a think tank?
I don't know, maybe our members of parliament would advise. From the academia, I know that in most schools of economics in this country, by the way, we have very valuable resource. Men and women who understand policy formulation based on evidence and particularly econometrics, if we are sitting in this area of finance. Yeah, that is there. But let me give you an example. The CBC, the CBC curriculum was piloted in 410 schools. And that time I was at Moy University just before my exit. And I was the lead consultant with the other researcher from Cambridge. And we went across 42 counties looking at how CBC was being implemented and considered the economics of funding CBC. We did a report after 6 months, that's 3 months of study of the pilot. And the report raised many things like The digital tablets in the country were 95% distributed, but utilization was under 4%. That's an example. We went to Nairobi Primary School here, and all those tablets were locked up in a drawer. One, they were not enough. Two, people didn't want to get into trouble, so that when people went there as auditors, they would find the computers intact. And we recommended many things around, capacity building. We discovered that the primary school teachers in lower primary were above 40 to 50 years. The mamas who know how to take care of children, the mature men who are gentle with young kids are taken to class 1, 2, and 3, where rote learning is the norm. So when you introduce computers there, these are very reluctant learners. So, and even then, you carry 200 of them to Kakamega High School in the hall, and you're not using CBE pedagogy. You are on the platform there lecturing them how they should teach. So we raised all that, but the elephant in the room was that when we did econometrics modeling of CBC, it came out that 1 year funding from pre-primary 1 to class 1 would be costing the Kenya government that time 360 billion annually. So we made recommendations, evidence-based recommendations, that if you are going to roll out CBC, let us start with pre-primary 1, then pre-primary 2, as we build capacity, as we source for resources. But then a political decision was made that time that we are going to roll out CBC from pre-primary to grade 4 at once. It has never worked. It will never work, because the funding model just is prohibitive. So we gave the report to the minister, then Amina, at KICD. And 3 days later, she was transferred as a minister for education. So I don't know whether I'm answering your question, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I know we have a session coming up, and Prof has another class coming up in the evening for master students. And therefore, we want to thank him so much for the commitment. It's not easy. Even me, as a senior lecturer, I wouldn't be able to do all this, and him being the vice chancellor and the many activities around him. So basically, a very good role model, not just to us, but to all of us here. When you are diligent and you give your best, also God remembers you. So we can only pray for him. We will definitely be starting up the class for the next lecturer. I request that we have a program that